That's better though. Good morning. I think we are live. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Just depends on when you're watching and when you're tuning in, if you're watching us live or you're watching the replay. My name is Clara Lyons-DeVaughn, and I am the broker owner of Lyonsview Realty. Our team provides residential, commercial for small businesses and nonprofits, and property management services. We launched Financial Fridays to really help you stay current on those trends that impact your bottom line. And our goal is to provide you with resources, information, and tips to assist you in making the best financial decisions. Because our commitment is really to maximize your wealth building power now and in the future. So I'm really, really glad that you tuned in today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Our guests are here as a resource to you, so feel free to, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat. So let me get to that screen so I can see your questions. and yeah, you can put your questions in the comment sections. If we don't get back to them today, we will get back to them uh, in the feed. So you'll have your answer. And today we're going to be talking about student loans. So there are a lot of graduations that are happening across the country. Um, there are new high school graduates who are looking towards attending college in the fall. So it's really important that you understand what's going on and what's available concerning student loan debt. I was only one of my siblings to attend college. I went out of the area and I incurred probably what 40 over $40,000 of student loan debt between my undergraduate and my master's degrees. I didn't have any help getting into the school game. My dad went to the eighth grade, but he was a phenomenal entrepreneur and he had several prosperous businesses and real estate holdings that provided for our family. So we were good. But I didn't get any help in that area. I also didn't have any direction in getting scholarships. I had a great GPA, but that's kind of another program. But, I remember my first day on campus not knowing how I was going to pay the bill for all the classes in the dorm. I didn't even know I had to pay those kinds of things. So, imagine how I felt that after graduation, I got a bill for repayment of my student loan debt. So thank God I was working and I was being paid pretty well. And I was able to pay off my student debt, but no one told me that I had options. So today you are in for a phenomenal treat. You can avoid making major financial mistakes, which burden you with debt and keep you from transferring wealth to future generations. This broadcast is going to give you some updates on legislation impacting student loan debt forgiveness, some resources and strategies and to assist you in having your education be an asset versus a liability. So I'm really, really happy to welcome our guest today, and I'm going to bring him into the studio. There you are. Mr. Gardine Wilson, thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I am doing phenomenal.
Awesome. I'm, I'm, I'm well. I'm well. I know you're in another time zone, so I really appreciate you making it in this morning. So tell our audience a little bit about yourself, and we'll start there.
My name
My
is
name is
Gardine
Gardine
Wilson.
Wilson.
I am
I
a
am a
financial
financial
professional
professional
with
with
Prudential
Prudential
Financial
Financial
Services.
Services.
I'm
I'm
actually
actually
based out of
based out of
Charlotte.
Charlotte.
However, I travel where God will send me to actually
Indeed.
help our people all over the country. Uh, this is actually a crisis. The student loan debt situation is a crisis. And I appreciate your comments, and especially in relation to your path. It's actually been typical to most people's paths, especially people in my community that I grew up with. We didn't have anybody that came around, knocked on doors like they did back in the day when they would come and pick up that weekly check for life insurance. Nobody was coming and saying, "Hey, listen, if you have anybody that's planning on going to college, let me show you how to get prepared." Unfortunately, A lot of people actually wait until the 11th and 12th grade to start planning for college. The issue around college needs to start as early as birth. As financial professionals, that's one of the things that they teach us. If you're looking at buying a home, you want to make sure you have enough money to maintain it. If you're buying a car, you want to have enough money to maintain it. It's not enough just to get it. And the same thing around student loans. You have to begin preparing at birth for student loans. When we talk about the history of student loans, student loan situation happened in 1958, and it was connected to the space race. Russia had gotten there before the United States, and because of that, the United States was looking at themselves and saying, yes, we've actually started this baby boomer piece. We've come out of World War II, the Korean War, and we're ready to enjoy, enjoy, enjoy. And at the same time, there was no platform for our education. And immediately, that's what they looked at, is that we don't have people in science, we don't have people in technologies. Russia has actually beat us. For people that are actually looking at things in the news, they actually can see even now, China's actually making a major push. Russia's actually, in front of this whole thing of cyber attacks. And when you look at how student loans came to be, it was a process to give Americans an opportunity to actually apply, go to college, and have the government actually help with their education. And so the system also was designed around a 10-year window. And what I'm about to say is extremely important. Extremely important. When you look at going to college, your first year's salary should exceed your entire student loan debt.
Say that again.
When, when you are looking to go to college, the system is set up around a 10-year window. Your entire first year salary coming out of college should exceed your entire student loan debt when you come out of college.
Got it.
Okay?
Got
That
it.
metric alone puts everything in play, primarily because it's college is designed to be paid off in 10 years. And so the system is basically set up in 10 years. When you look at how it exploded historically, 1958, you had 3 million. By the time you got into the 60s, it had jumped to over 10 million. And you look at today, you have over 45 million people that have student loan debt, totaling more than credit cards, totaling more than car loans, $1.7 trillion. Now, you can agree, as with most of my clients, most people that I talk to that I grew up with, the student loan debt is something we don't talk about. We don't have the conversation at the dinner table. We ain't at the nightclub talking about it. We ain't talking about it in church. Student loan debt is like, don't say nothing about it. Primarily because a lot of us have not gained the tools, and we don't actually understand this whole phenomenon. I mean, can you agree? Because
I would agree. I mean, I didn't have, like I said, I had a great GPA, and I didn't have anyone who said, okay, this is how you prepare for going into college, and it's going to be a major financial, not just, tuition, books, but housing, food, all of those things. And I remember working one year, carrying a full load and working two jobs, to get me through a period of time. And I was like, I can't do this.
yes,
And so the planning aspect of it, especially, in our community, is something that I think is really important for people to understand. And also the repayment side, because we don't think about that. And it's like, okay, they're giving me this money or they're allowing me to go. And now we're on the opposite side of the fence.
yes, and similar to myself, my community that I grew up with in Omaha, Nebraska. When you look at this whole thing around student loans, if you went off to college, the community was like, "Hey,
Congratulations.
congratulations! He went off to college. We don't know how he got there. We don't know what he's going to come out of there with." but the fact that he's went to college in our community, and then it was a good thing that was actually seen by the government. And so going back into how it's designed, how it's set up, what is the parameters around this whole student loan thing? It's that 10%, think about 10 years, 10% is actually designed each year to go towards your student loan debt. Okay. And so when you look at why 10 years, why is it that you need to actually be making more than your entire student loan debt? It is that parameter because in 10 years, you should actually have your entire student loan debt paid off because you're allocating 10% of the first 10 years of your salary. And that's typically how it's actually set up. Easy to understand for the most part. Unfortunately, 41% of individuals who have a college degree are not even in the field that they graduated in. So, you've got a degree and you've actually got $100,000 of debt, and you went to that school to be a veterinarian, and then you actually end up saying, no, I'm just going to take an office job, and I'm making $50,000, $60,000. It actually bodes the issue that really affects the African American community. 95% of people, African Americans who graduated from college, 20 years after they graduated, still owe 95% of that debt, if not more.
Yeah. That's a pretty daunting statistics, and I can't remember now how long it took me to pay everything off. Um, but that is a daunting statistic, and in my industry, it's really impacting people who have are applying for mortgages because in the past, that student loan debt was not counted, or that repayment wasn't counted until, it started to kick in. And now they're counting it even though it's in deferment, And so I know some of the legislation is changing around that, and you're going to speak to some of those things. But that's significant for people because it's not only impacting, their day to day living because, you have to count that into what you need to bring home to survive. But also, if you want to do something else, such as purchase a property, it impacts that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. And you're right. One of the pieces of legislation is actually around not so much the debt to income ratio as it relates to student loans, but for people that are on the income based repayment plan, that actually should be the parameter which gives people a lower debt to income ratio that actually gives them a position to qualify for the loan. One of those bills is actually in Congress right now. Going back to uh, how is it that, first of all, we actually have all of this student loan debt? A number of people actually trying to figure out how. How do I even tackle this monster? There are about 10% of the companies in this country actually are participating through the CARES Act actually gave the employers the opportunity to actually apply $5,200 per year towards your student loan. And in addition to that, by you paying, in some cases, like at Prudential, we have a company that we partner with called the Vault. And so the interest is actually suspended. Prudential pays a part, we pay a part, and that actually helps to accelerate actually bringing the student loans down for individuals that are with Prudential. Some of the other companies actually have similar programs in partnerships with companies like the Vault. And in that, when you look at the main catalyst that actually creates this huge uh, debt crisis is interest. Interest, for the most part, with student loans tends to always be higher than the prime rate. Okay, and when you actually look at going into undergrad, if you actually have a need financially, Pell Grants are not giving what they used to. Pell Grants actually used to give a lot more. College was not as expensive. And now you look at what's actually happening with not as much grants being given. College tuition is actually going much higher, and individuals are actually coming out with a much higher student loan debt. Was talking to a gentleman last week, 25 years old, really didn't have any idea about the income-based repayment option. He actually has $130,000 of student loan debt. The issue with that is that his parents are actually on the hook for 60 grand of that
Wow.
in Parent Plus loans. And so when you look at the growing crisis around this, there are over 4 million parents that have actually taken out student loans for their children or grandchildren. And that is actually over $96 billion.
Wow.
And it's growing, you know? And so in that, yes, I actually say need to start looking as early as birth and really start getting into some intensive planning around eighth grade about where are you actually going to school? How are we actually looking to fund it? There are still plenty of scholarships, from people like you that had a great GPA, plenty of scholarships that go untapped, and are actually not even touched when you actually look at it. And the other thing is very key. With colleges, oftentimes colleges will actually say, tell us why you want to come here and tell us why we should give you some type of aid from the college. Kids can actually write an essay and actually say, this is why. You would be amazed at how many colleges have these scholarships that are designed that kids don't even write an essay for because they believe it's too much work. And that money is actually sitting there for them to say, look, I love your institution. I'm in the area. I want to do public service and I want to really push the name of XYZ College. And this is the reason why I've actually been thinking about wanting desperately to attend your college. Can you help? There's money out there for them. And so when we look at the situation now in terms of how, there are actually basically the straight 10-year period that you can actually pay. And then they actually have also graded. The 10 years is actually,
So before you hop into that, I just kind of want to recap what you said on the planning side in terms of getting funds for it. So one of the things I heard you say is that you can reach out to your employer, and that some employers have a matching program where they will actually pay you or pay a portion, match what you're doing for student loan debt repayment. That's one. Two, there is something that parents can do before you even get into college to kind of prepare. People should start actually preparing for their children when they're in the eighth grade, talking to a financial planner such as yourself to put things in place for their children. And then the third thing I heard you say is that there are grants out there, and to just research one of the various grants that you can get based on what career you're going into, what grants are available through the school, and something as simple as writing the essays that certain schools require where they can match you with certain programs and certain finances or funds that they have for things that match up with your career goals. So coming into it, you can just defer it up front by getting money to offset those costs so they don't become a debt that you have to borrow to cover those fees. And so, got
absolutely.
it. Got it. And so now you're going to talk about different repayment options. So when I got my bill, they didn't give me any repayment options. They said, this is how much you're going to pay every month. It's to pay off your student loan debt. And like you said, it's a 10-year process. It may have taken a little bit more than, the 10 years, but they amortize like a car. You borrow a car, they say in 5 years, you will have paid it off. And this is how much you pay every month. But they didn't tell me that there were different options in terms of that repayment. So you're talking about in the repayment after you've incurred the debt. Now you actually do have options in terms of how you can pay back that debt. Correct?
yes,
Okay.
yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. That was, yes, beautiful recap. And again, for employers that may not already have it, because it was in the CARES Act when they actually did this with the CARES Act. Inside of the CARES Act, employers get a write-off for money that they actually pay towards employees' student loan debt. And in addition, it actually again gives credit to the employee for actually having payments going towards that. So when you look at the repayment options, in brief summary, this is very, very brief overview. There's a 10-year, straight payment option. You actually have a graduated payment option where you may actually start out paying
Can
less.
you talk a little bit louder? I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Okay, is that better?
Oh, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. So when you look at the straight 10-year payment option, straight 10-year payment option is again, over 10 years, this is what I'm going to pay. I'm going to pay out student loan completely. It's done. The second repayment option is actually graduated, where you say my income is going to increase. I'm going to start out with a lower payment. I'm going to recertify every couple of years. And at that point, I'm actually going to be paying more. But then you can stretch that out, up to 20 years to actually participate in that program. You also have the income-based repayment plans, and the income-based repayment plans, there are, basically four different ones. But in a nutshell, the income-based repayment, you apply for it. They say, okay, now your payments are being credited towards your student loan. So if you're actually in a 10-year or a 20-year income-based repayment plan, what typically happens is that after the 10 years or 20 years that you've actually been in an income-based repayment plan, the rest of that student loan is forgiven. And with that, you have to recertify typically every year. I know that with COVID, they actually released the recertification requirements. But again, everything is actually coming back, after September 30th, unless they extend it, and it does not look like that's going to happen. So the income-based repayment plans are something that a lot of people are not really aware of. The issue too is that, and a lot of this has actually been in Congress lately, the service providers for government loans, in some cases like Navient, it's been just egregious um, information that did not trickle down to help. They had things going on with Navient where they were just on a time trying to get people off the phone. So when you're talking just like we're talking now, it's such a huge issue. There's so many twists and turns with this thing around student loans that unless someone is really in tune to directly help you and specifically address your need, your income, how you have the best option to pay it, a lot of that help is really not out there. And so with that, a lot of people have actually done consolidations where they shouldn't have. A lot of people have, actually didn't, had no knowledge of income-based repayment plans. And so in that, it's always good, I say, to actually start with getting an itemized bill from your college. Make sure you do a reconciliation of what has actually happened with service provider A, B, or C. And then also, see what negotiations you can actually do in order to get that paid. The income-based repayment plan is an excellent situation. Again, going back to what I was saying with people that actually have lower student loan amounts that actually are not in a position to pay, based on income. One of the other things that I think is very, very key is government loans versus private loans. Okay, now this actually makes the water even a little bit murkier. However, when you look at government loans are directly with the government. They open the door and allow banks and other companies to actually come in and finance student loans. The problem with private loans is private loans are, like you just said earlier, Clara, this is like a contract between you and that bank. They're not looking at any forgiveness options. This is something that's directly connected to what you agreed to. And the issue there is that you don't have as much flexibility with private loans as you do with government loans. Government loans, you have forbearance, forgiveness, deferment, all of that type of stuff. Private loans, no. It is very, very key that people understand what type of loans. That's why I always say go back and look at the itemized statement from the college and actually find out what loans are private, what loans are government loans, what loans are parent plus loans. So then you actually understand how to navigate when tackling your individual student loan issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let's say that the college gives you a package, basically a financial aid package.
Mm-hmm.
And in that financial aid package, it might be a combination of types of loans, if I'm understanding you correctly. So the public or the government sponsored loans, the advantages of those is that you can get forbearance, you can get, they can actually wipe it out or wipe out a portion of that, which I heard you say. I didn't know that under, you know, this last year with COVID, under the CARES Act, they were actually forgiving some of the student loan debt. If people took advantage of that.
Well,
Um,
go ahead.
is that what you said or no?
Well, what I'm saying is the income-based repayment plan, the situation with an income-based repayment plan, when you enter into that, now they've been around for a long time, people just have not understood it. But you can actually enter into an income-based repayment plan, and in that, after you do the payment over 10 years, or after you do the payment over a 20-year period, the rest of whatever you owe. So, say for example, I just did one the day before yesterday with a client, and they actually owed about $168,000 of student loans. But we looked at an income-based repayment plan because they look at your income, poverty level, and some other statistics. And what happens is that we looked at if they were actually to enter into this and pay this over, they were going to pay $86,000. The other, you know, $80,000 and some change after the 10-year period was going to be completely forgiven. But it's like you have to make these payments consecutively.
Right,
And after you've done that over the 10-year or 20-year period, the rest of the amount is actually forgiven on these federal loans.
right,
You
right.
see what I'm saying? So
Yeah,
an income-based repayment situation has been around. We just have not understood how to access it, how to participate in it, because the loan servicers, for the most part, have not given the information
as an
because they,
option.
yes,
Yeah, those
okay,
options haven't been presented presented in a way that people say, "Oh, this is available to me." And then you're saying with the private loans, that option doesn't even exist. So
yes, yes,
public loans have more flexibility for negotiation
it's the
than a
government,
private loan.
yes,
And a private
yes,
loan, it's like this is what it is. This is what you have to pay. And if you don't, are there repercussions? Or are there, what
well,
happens to people who don't pay their student loan debt?
well, of course. When we was actually on the seminar back in April with Dr. Soares and our team involved, Dr. Soares made it very clear. He said your student loan will actually come to the funeral. He said it will go to the repast, and it will actually be there well after you enter the grave. And he is right. You typically student loans, unless there's some extenuating circumstances, you can't even write those off in bankruptcy. It's
Wow.
about like taxes. And so with that, again, tackling the issue around student loans is very key. I do want to actually touch on this, especially some of the things that happen from a legislative standpoint, because I know we're getting close to time. One of the things that Biden actually put in uh, the relief, this last COVID relief bill that passed, people got the $1,400. The sweet spot that was actually inside of that bill that got passed was forgiveness. It used to be that once student loans were forgiven, that was seen as income. So you had to report that as income on your taxes. And so with the last Menendez, Schumer, Warren, they actually were able to get that last piece in and said, now if your student loans in an income-based repayment plan, and in the example I gave earlier, if you have that $86,000 that actually is forgiven, that now is non-taxable. So that
Wow.
actually creates a truly forgiven situation. And so, from a legislative standpoint, that is very, very
That's
key.
huge. Yeah.
Yes, yes, especially because one of the other misnomers is that individuals that actually are engineers, doctors, attorneys, they come out with the most student loan debt. The issue, though, is that 58% of all student loans are paid by those individuals that have high student loan debt, primarily because what? They still follow the matrix. they actually are paying it off over 10 years because they're making a salary to pay it off.
Right.
Okay. People who actually come out owing less for the most part with, lower degrees in terms of, probably some social work or something like that, where they're not technically making as much money. Those loans actually are the ones that are creating this spiral in prices. And like I said, the parents are actually really getting in trouble now behind a lot of these student loans. And some of them actually, again, are wrapped up in private loan situations. Government loans have a lot more flexibility. Private loans, not so much. And now you're looking at refinancing a house, or you're looking at some other options around trying to address how to pay off the student loans when we move forward. A lot of the moratorium around right now, people that I had a client out of Texas. She actually had still been paying on her student loans, and I'm like, well, they actually said you can, stop paying on the student loans back in March. And she was like, well, I'm just giving away money. I said, well, not so much you giving away money, but you actually are getting credit. So since they put the moratorium in effect back in March of last year, not only do you get credit, but the interest for the government loans has actually been halted on your student loans. So what it was meant to do was actually help people to actually really put some money up, and now you actually have over $2 trillion in savings with Americans right now, and that's the whole thing, was to actually give you a breather in the midst of this COVID thing. And for me, I actually am saying that when that moratorium is lifted on September 30th, everyone who has student loans needs to have a plan. You need to have a plan, regardless of if they come through with canceling some debt, of which Biden has actually said, he's looking to do on the campaign trail. 10,000 was the number that had been floated around. Cordova right now, Department of Education, he's actually looking at, should we do some forgiveness? Should we not? How does all of that actually come into play? So that we should actually know in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But at the end of the day, I always say, start at the beginning, itemize statement from your institution, get a handle on where all of this actually started and where it actually is going to be. Because if there are discrepancies, you want to be able to address those, and you want to actually have a plan in paying off your student loans.
Yeah. So are there, you mentioned one resource, which was Vault. Are there other resources that are out there to assist folks with navigating the management, of their, that student loan debt process?
Yes, you do actually have, some entities like the Student Borrower Protection Center. I know that the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has actually come in for some of the more egregious things that have actually happened. The other thing that I want to mention that is very key, some of the institutions that actually said they were accredited. So say like just an example, like a Trump University, that said that they were accredited and they were A-rated and this, that, and the other, and they actually found out that actually they weren't, and
Mhm.
that degree is not really worth much. There actually have been um, appeals, and some of those student loans have actually been forgiven, like government money that actually went towards those colleges has actually been wiped out. The other thing that's actually come here as well is people that have disabilities. So people that actually have disabilities can petition to actually have their student loans forgiven as well. And, the government agencies are looking at that, and some of those have actually been forgiven as well. So, a non-accredited university, people that actually have like, disabilities. I know some people with, they got your GI Bill and had the VA and some of that stuff for any type of disability that you have that's about, 100% disability is looked at in terms of a forgiveness option. The $10,000 situation or the $50,000 situation in forgiveness that Warren, Menendez, Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders, them are actually pushing Biden to actually write off. Biden is saying, listen, no, I want this to go through Congress, for Congress to actually approve it, and then it'll actually be something that's actually in. They've already put, again, the precursor in that says the forgiveness of the student loan is actually going to be a non-taxable event. So when you look at that, it sets the platform. However, a lot of what I've actually looked at lately is saying, if there is 10,000, great, but it's not something that people can count on. That's why. Clara, I say people need to have a plan around how to pay off their student loans.
Awesome, awesome. So this has been, a lot of information, and we've just kind of touched the surface of this because we can't, do it real justice in the time that we have. But I do, want to thank you, and we're doing something, for those people who are interested in getting, more in-depth information about how to mitigate their student loan debt and how to plan
Yes.
for their student loan debt. We're going to be doing a workshop in August. Um, Let me put the information up if you want more information about that. Uh, There it is. So you can, give us your information, and we'll send you all the details for the class. But it's really important that one, there are resources available to help you. You do have options in terms of how you repay that student loan debt. Gardine mentioned at least two or three of those options, and then actually they go into a lot more depth in terms of your repayment options that you have available to you, and then all of the resources that are there to not only help you on the planning side of the equation, but also help you on the repayment side of the equation. So we hope that you will join us for the workshop in August. Um, that's the link bit.ly LL student loan workshop. And we'll send you the details once we have it all worked out, all finalized. But it's a lot. It's a
Yes.
lot. And
Yes.
an education should be an asset to you. It should move you forward in your career. It should move you forward in your position in life, and it should make you happy. To get more education to do the things you want in life, and to be the person uh, in the world, and to get the tools to help you do what you want to do. So if people want to get in contact with you, how do they reach you, Gardine, if they wanted to make an appointment with you?
Yes, actually, my email is first name Gardine, Gardine .Wilson at Prudential, Prudential.com. The telephone number is 704-421-7826. And again, you have hit it on the head. College education is a return on investment. And that's why, as financial professionals, when we're talking to clients and they have a child and they're actually asking a question around how are we going to pay for college, that is where the conversation starts. That is where the investment begins. And again, you start to really turn the soil when they turn into, really get seventh, eighth grade, if not sooner. But it is unfortunately, it is a maze. And similar to what we do on the financial professional side, every case, every person, every household is an individual custom fit situation. And people's student loans actually are in a similar fashion. You've got the custom fit. What is the best option for you with the time that you are in this point in life? I so appreciate you actually giving me the opportunity to speak to your audience. This is a huge issue. And again, as it ties into real estate and actually helping people to actually get that American dream, you got to dig that debt up and actually get that in, over your shoulder so that you can actually move forward, be prosperous, be empowered, and actually be productive.
That's amazing. Thank you. I just appreciate you for joining us. So definitely reach out to Mr. Wilson to get your planning in place
Yes.
because everything is related. Debt management is real. And so, student loan debt, especially, join us for the workshop. Again, the link is on the screen if you're interested in really digging deeper and doing something more related to your situation and getting all of the information. Like I said, we can't do it in the time frame that we have. But I just want to thank Mr. Wilson for joining us today. Our guests are here as a resource to you, so definitely reach out to him I want to thank you for viewing today. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, you can post them in the comment section and we will definitely get back to you. So thanks again for watching. Financial Fridays is here to provide you with resources, information, and tips to help you make the best financial decisions. And those trends impact your bottom line. So I hope you receive something of value today. And as always, sending love, light, and prayers out to anyone who has lost a loved one. If you have someone in the hospital for whatever reason and can't be with them, if you're experiencing physical distancing, which now we're getting out, so that shouldn't be so bad. Hopefully, we'll all be closer to mask free as we move forward. And then especially to the essential employees who have served us this past year and a half, providing the needed services in healthcare, transportation, food, police, and fire protection, and especially our leadership. I just want to encourage everyone to take care of yourself, take care of your family, and stay safe. Continue to wear your mask. My name is Clara Lyons-DeVaughn, and Financial Fridays, we stream live on Facebook and YouTube on Fridays at 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. You can join us. Until then, keep living your best life. Thanks again, Gardine. Really appreciate you.